So one of the things we wanted to start off with, again, as we've done in the past, and it's just a token reminder of grounding ourselves. So we've been a long week. We've coming from many different places, a lot buzzing in our heads, a lot that we're carrying in our bodies. So just asking that we take about 30 seconds of quiet, which is roughly the length of 3 long, deep breaths. So if we could all do that together. You can turn off your screens if you want. You can, however you wish, close your eyes. If you join me, 3 long, deep breaths. Thank you, folks. Thanks for joining in this collective spirit to just slow our roll, ground ourselves a little bit, be present to, to everything that is alive in this moment, not just being up in our heads, because that has been and that is the invitation for everybody who is here today. If there's anybody who is new joining us for this panel, welcome. My name is Edmundo Norte. I'm serving as the Dean of Intercultural International Studies, which includes all of our ethnic studies department areas, upon which this series was based. Our African American studies, Asian American studies, Chicanx Latinx studies, Native American and Indigenous studies, which includes Pacific Islander studies, and our comparative ethnic studies courses. For those of you that have been a part of the journey for the past 4 sessions, you know that we have been sharing our stories, getting to know each other, speaking more about our own experiences, looking specifically at how structural racism, the history of structural racism, specifically, not exclusively, specifically here on Turtle Island, but basically across the globe, what have been the impacts when you have policies, laws, practices that happen at an institutional or systemic level, governmental level. What does that mean? What are the impacts? What do those impacts look like? What does it look like on our bodies? What is the impact of that on our hearts, on our relations? What is the impact of that on our spirit and on our culture and the way that we move in the world, the way we live in the world? And how has that structural racism also impacted and shaped the way that we think about and frame the world? And how powerfully a particular way of framing the world determines how it is that we end up showing up and acting in the world. That has implications all around, again, all around the medicine wheel in terms of not only our heads, but our bodies, our hearts, and our spirit. So today, we're going to use this time to hear back from the panelists because we didn't have a chance to do that in the previous sessions. So part of the core of today's time together will be our panelists naming the impact of having been able to sit together in circle to hear from each other, hear our stories, and I will be bringing in one more student voice who is a longtime ethnic studies student and community member in the broader De Anza community. So Demi Yang will be joining us today for this panel session as well. So wanted to start off in the way that we have with all of our other panels, is to taking a few moments just to recognize that we are on indigenous lands, and to acknowledge that wherever we are, wherever we're zooming in from, we are on land that was originally that there were peoples who originally lived on these lands, that were in relationship with the land and were custodians of the land. And even though colonization has happened, and there's a whole new structure that has been built on top of this, that these peoples are still here. And one of the things that they wanted to be able to share out at each of these sessions was to let us know that, well, acknowledging that, be recognizing that we are on the land that was formerly occupied by other people, and they are still here. And this is land that was taken oftentimes by force and by violence, that they are still here. And we can start off by not only acknowledging it, but also taking action, and putting into the chat just a couple of links that I've researched and I've looked at, because I live in the East Bay Hills in Oakland. So that is Lisjan Ohlone territory here. De Anza College is very close to where the Amah Mutsun folks live. And so there's a link there to where you can contribute if you are moved to do so. What I wanted to do now was just to share one thing that has been really powerful in the discussions that we've had in the follow-up to these sessions, has been the way that we've approached it. And again, let me do this in this way. I will share screen with, I'm very bad at technology, as you can easily surmise, but I still wanted to share for those who are brand new to this session. We have here in the North American Indigenous Medicine Wheel that speaks to the 4 aspects of our humanity, that we're not simply thinking creatures, and even within our thoughts, a very limited range of rational forms of thinking. We are people who are carried around in bodies, in physical bodies, and everything that happens to us has physical impacts on us. We're human beings that get carry with us our hearts and our emotions and our relationships with others. And we are beings that all have spiritual connections. And when the medicine wheel was first shared to me by a colleague, Manly Begay, decades ago, I remember him pointing out that the spiritual for him was also, you could draw a slash and write cultural, because it was how it is that you walk in beauty every day. Walking around with mindfulness of, I am here because of generations past, the efforts and the blood, sweat, and tears of people who have come before, who have made it possible for us to be here today, and that every action we take today will impact 7 generations down the road. So part of the work that we have tried to do within this panel series, as well as what I believe is reflected in the work that we do within ethnic studies, is to honor all these dimensions of our humanity, to bring all of that, welcome all of that into the work that we do together as colleagues and as students. And part of what I think, though, for those of you who have been as part of this panel, you've experienced a window into what that can look like and feel like. So as a kind of a bridge, connecting some of the work that we've done in the past and linking us into the future, I wanted to share a video that some of you have seen, because we have shared it out in some spaces. But I wanted to make sure that everyone here had a chance to see it as a way of how we integrate all these different dimensions of the medicine wheel in the work that we do. This comes from a clip of a film developed by World Trust, which is based in Oakland, and it is about multiracial healing and solidarity building. So Don, if you could play that for us, please.
My family comes from Mexico. You know, I saw a grandmother that every morning, before she did anything, she would, get up real early, 4:30. I thought my grandma was crazy. Why you get up so early, right? But she would get up at 4:30 in the morning and she would begin her prayer. And she would begin praying, and I would hear her in her prayer, and sometimes in her, in her prayer, it sounded like a song, like a chant, like she was beginning the reverberation of her day. And she would, call to those spirits. She would ask for assistance. She would, beckon for blessings. And in my mind, what I began to realize what my grandma was doing is that she was, connecting with that greater source, that sacredness, and that is generations old for her. Because her grandmother did that, and her grandmother did that, and her grandmother. So that she was connecting with this lineage of spirit keepers, of tradition holders, of sacred messengers, and bringing to that the sacredness of her God, of her sacred Creator, and then after she finished that, she would then come to where we were sleeping as children. We all slept in one room, and she would then bless us, give us a blessing, a bendición. And as a little boy, I used to hate it. Sometimes she'd wake me up early. Grandma, why are you waking me up so early, right? But can't you bless me later? Isn't God around later, You blessed me last night. Is it still good for right now? Why I need another blessing, And what I didn't understand is not only the significance of that, but the impact of that. That what she was doing is connecting me to generational medicine. She was connecting me to ancestors that 7 generations ago prayed for me when I was just a dream, just a hope. That she was sending a message to me that they wanted me to know. And that message was that I was sacred, that I was a blessing, and that within the essence of who I was, that I carried a sacred purpose and a sacred responsibility to carry on that prayer, if you will, carry on that song, carry on that ritual, carry on that tradition, so that those prayers wouldn't be wasted, so that those dreams, those sacrifices, and when I think about it today, I can't even imagine, what my ancestors did, what they had to sacrifice through, what pains they had to carry, and that they didn't give up, that they continued praying, they continued singing, they continued dancing, they continued forward in order that I could wake up that morning and that my grandmother would be there and somebody would bless me. But what my grandmother also understood is that she had to inoculate me. She had to medicine me up, because she knew that there were going to be times in which not only was I not going to feel like a blessing, just for how I looked and what I reflected to the society, and my skin coloration and my features, and what that reflected to people, that people weren't going to see me as a blessing. They were going to see me as the enemy. They were going to see me as a perpetrator. They were going to see me as a delinquent, as a gang member. They were going to see me as the potential person that they were going to lock up, that they were going to drug up, they were going to medicate, that they wanted to deport. She knew that she had to bless me up so that I would, in my spirit, remember that song, remember that prayer, remember that wish, remember that blessing, so that I wouldn't give up and so that I wouldn't give in. She also knew that because of the way of this society and its woundedness, that there were people that would want to conquer me, that would want to tear me down and break me up and make me hate myself so much that I would hurt people that look like me, that I would destroy people that look like me, that I would look in the mirror and not like myself, and they would shame me of even wanting to be like my father or my mother or anybody that looked like me. She knew all of this. Her spirit knew that. So she got up real early in the morning, gathered those prayers, and inoculated me up and blessed me up. And I don't disregard the blessing of growing up in Compton, you know, straight out of Compton, you know, because what I realized that there was sacredness right there. That, you know, my grandma and my mama, but my best friend Tyrone's mama too. Because when we go pick him up, I go pick him up for school, and Miss Mosley was a big lady, right? And she used to call me baby. Come here, baby, you know. And I thought I was a big boy, but you didn't mess with Miss Mosley. She had a cane, and she knew about consistency and follow through. You didn't pay attention; she consistently followed through on you. She had a reputation, you know. But she called me baby, and when I go get her, she said, "Bless you, child. Bless you, baby." She blessed me up too.
Thank you, Don, for sharing that. So with that, I actually wanted to deviate from the plan that I had with the panelist, and actually do a round, do just a quick round of amongst our panelists, your thoughts and your reflections on this piece that we just shared. And ask the audience members if you would share any thoughts or reflections that come up for you into the chat. I'd love to capture those. But I just want to preface what my question here is, because I love this piece by Jerry Theo, because it encapsulates so much of what ethnic studies is about in so many ways. But I'd love to maybe start off with our instructors to get your feedback. And in my screen, you just happen to be right next to each other in a row there. And Chess, I'm wondering if you could get us rolling. And that I keep putting you on.
It's fine. It's fine. It's what I get for joining the meeting right after you. It's like I'm right next to you. That video really resonated with me because during this past year of pandemic, I've really been trying to deepen my spiritual and intuitive practice. And it's something that even as, you know, educators can sometimes get, I don't want to say beaten out of us, but it's forced out of us in ways when we're privileging our brains and and that kind of work. But to remember that we do this work because we're sacred and because our ancestors are sacred and those who are going to come after us are sacred. That's why we do the work of thinking about this, because it'll heal our spirit and our families and our community spirit. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chesa, for that quick reflection there. Megan, I want to go to you, Megan.
So what really stood out, and I actually jotted notes, we have a purpose and we have a responsibility. And so that really resonated with me. And it's, when we talk about our privilege that, that comes with that purpose, that we can be here, we can share, and we can hopefully work to bring about equity and justice and work to make the world a better place. So with that comes that responsibility. But then just also, I think, resonating with a lot of what I've heard, what we've heard throughout all of these panel presentations, and that is that we are here because of the work that our ancestors have done. And so we're part of that legacy. And so there's that responsibility again, that we're here, I'm here because of things that my ancestors went through that have allowed me to be here. And so again, just purpose, responsibility.
Right on. Thank you. And by the way, for those who are new today, Megan Kensler teaches in our Native American Indigenous Studies program, and Chesa Caparas is our instructor in part-time and teaches in our intercultural studies, ethnic studies courses, and also in language arts. And I want to go now to Amanda Sullivan, who teaches our Intro to Pacific Islander History and Culture course. Amanda, your reflections.
Yeah, I really like the video. I really like the continuity he draws from like ancestors 7 generations ago who are possibly, you know, praying to different gods, to, you know, who Miss Mosley was praying to, and who his grandma was praying to. Like, it was just really important to me because you know, sometimes, like, especially the discussions that we have in these groups, like, bring up really heavy topics. There's a lot of like, what can we do? Like, what's actionable, or like, what can you personally and physically do? But, you know, when I'm not working on like the physical realm, like, I do have an urge to like pray, but this is very hard to reconcile, like, between, like, you know, with religion's role in like colonialism, racism, and white supremacy. Sometimes it's very hard to square that. And yet my heart, like, and my mind and my spirit, I have to pray. And so I guess I just like seeing like a reflection of that and a reinforcement of that, that, you know, these blessings are blessings in and of themselves, and where the person is directing the prayers to and from may differ over time, but like the human and the essential spirit work that needs to be done in order to be free. Yeah, I just really like that.
Thank you, Amanda. I just want to let the audience know that our panelist, Deborah Taylor, who was here for our very first panel, was joining us, but then, being the true nurse that she is, the neighbor had an issue going on, and she stepped off to attend to her neighbor. So hopefully she will be joining us back again later in the session. But I'm wondering, Derek, if you'd be up for chiming in, for sharing what your reflections are about this piece.
Absolutely. I'm right there with the prayer. For me, you know, I wouldn't be where I was at if it was someone else that wasn't praying for me. And so we know about the power of prayer. And then come here, baby, that tickled me, because that's just a natural thing that our ancestors would do. You know, they don't have to call you by your name, but once they call you baby, right, you're automatically a part of the family, right? And then that additional blessing, right? So everybody gets a blessing. And so it carries a long way. And even when you're down, you know, there's always going to be somebody praying for you. And for me, in my spirituality, prayer changes things.
Thank you, Derek. I wanted to bring one of our student voices in here, and just want to see, Kimberly, are you up for sharing your reflections on this piece?
Edmundo, I don't think Kimberly is here with us.
Oh, okay.
She was, I think she might be having some internet issues.
Exactly. Yeah, we were in our little pre-meeting. There was a little bit of struggle with the internet there. So let me actually go to Kari. Kari, I think I saw you on here. Yes, I see you.
Yeah, I remember that video from another time, and it was just as good then. Oh, I can't put my video back on.
We can hear you though.
Okay, cool, because I think my computer just decided it can't. Anyways, the thought that I had about like him talking about like needing to be blessed up for the things that he was going to experience in his interactions in his world, right? Sort of like really kind of articulated like how the impact of knowing that his ancestors from so as far as 7 generations back intended for him to be there, intended, worked towards his having a good life, a meaningful life. I see the impact of that as like satisfying a need to, you know, like have persistent belonging, right? You belong. You belong. Somebody accepted you from before you were even here. And nobody can take that away from you, right?
Got it.
Yeah. And I just think about how like, well, I guess like I don't want to end this on a down note, but I think about how we don't hear much of that perspective in regular life, regular discourse, right?
Mhm.
That's not an intention that we have learned in the way that we do things these days. Both in the sense of like living your own life, but also in the sense of like what you do when you decide to bring in a new one, right? That's a big topic for some people.
Got it. Thank you, Kari. I appreciate that. You named a couple of really important ideas that I think I want to hear other folks name how they connect with that piece that you were talking about. The impact of moving in the world every day and what it is that we draw from to sustain ourselves as we go through that. So thank you. I'll come back around to you for the second round of questions on this.
Okay.
I wanted to just check now to see if is there any other panelist that wants to speak to the video before we shift to the next question for all the panelists. Okay, I did my instructor 7-second wait just to give people time to process, and I think if they wanted to formulate a response, not having received one there, I will now actually want to see if I can introduce to you our panelist, who was originally going to be here with other folks as a part of the comparative ethnic studies presentation. For those of you who were in the previous panels, you know that we kept shifting question number 6. There was a sixth question that all the panelists were asked to engage with, and we just simply didn't have enough time. We didn't want to cut off the rich stories that were coming through. So we are tending to that here today. And as part of that, I want to introduce Demi Yang, also known as Demi G, because some of us call her demigod. She has been just a wonderful colleague, community member as a student who has been in my classes and in many of the other ethnic studies classes in our division, and was an ethnic studies major. So Demi, I wanted to start off with you by asking you, can you share with us the creation story of your social justice consciousness and of your values? What did you go through that brought you to where you are in terms of your thinking and viewing of the world?
Hi everyone, my name is Demi, and I'll try to condense the story as short as possible. I'm originally from Taiwan. I was born and raised in Taiwan. I am indigenous Taiwanese, and I moved to the state around age of 24. When I was in Taiwan, my dad and I were actually pretty advocate on Taiwan sovereignty and indigenous sovereignty in Taiwan. But I just don't, back then, I don't have any words about if this is anything is like a ethnicity lens or maybe just race lens. I don't have any of that. I thought everything is political, which is true. But back then I was just thinking, oh, I cannot be claim myself as an indigenous. I even don't know if I wanted to claim myself as a Taiwanese. Everything is political. And then back then I was like 10 skiing kids, and then everyone saw me. They would ask me like, oh, are you indigenous? But I am civilized. There's no roots and the culture is only my look, has an indigenous look. And I would tell them, I am a city indigenous, I'm urban indigenous, because I just don't have the language, I don't have the culture, any roots. And people would just like walk away. And then I was like, okay, that just kind of reminds me last week when Gary shared that the purity is from the colonizer. And then I was like, okay, I don't have anything to prove except my face. So that is really something still bothers me to another day. But fast forward to come to the States, I initially take women's studies class because I just don't like any of the gender norm our society hold to against all gender. It's just a joke about, I would say like, if I can get a penny when every time someone could tell me women don't think like that, I will be rich. So I take the feminist Black feminism class. That's where I got introduced to African American study. And then I just keep taking class because I think every experience are so intertwined, are so connected. And my experience is not like unique. It's also similar to brother and sister here, and also other like Pacific Islander as well. And so yeah, I just really appreciate all the professors I have here at the Enza College, because every one of you really instill something in me, where you're on call or on not. I know every time I go home, I post everything I learn on my social media. I just post on the story. I don't care if anyone reads it or not, because I'm just pretty sure one or two will really take it into the heart. And yeah, so I am a big fan of Professor Amanda. She's here. I'm just gonna be a fangirl over here. I really shout out to you and teach me all the Pacific Islander knowledge and how to be travel, even just like go to some place and not being like a basic tourist. And I even just remember how to call the place the right name they want, like calling Hawaii or calling Aotearoa, like calling the real name is not the colonizer name. And yeah, pretty much that's it. I just hope, I think all of us are refugee to the Turtle Island or just to the Mother Earth, would either pushed by capitalism, imperialism, or colonialism. And we all come here to just gain some form of comfort, healing, or redemption. I just really hope we can take this time to heal each other, and then eventually we'll gain sovereignty.
Right on. Thank you, Demi. Appreciate that. Demi has done so much. It's just been a joy to work with her and see the work that she's been doing with so many groups in so many ways. So with this, actually, I wanted to now shift us. Now, okay, you're jumped in. Demi, you're part of the panel now, and so I wanted to go around and basically what the going to have a very brief amount of time, but going to ask all of the panelists to speak to question number 6. And I don't recall whether everyone actually got to see question number 6, but we didn't get to it in the previous panels. And maybe Don, you can drop that in the chat for us. But the idea was that, okay, we've created the space. We've had the institutional support to create this space of bringing us together, and not to debate, not to share challenging or facts or information, but to speak our stories, to speak the truths of how it is that systemic racism has impacted us in the overt ways, how it has impacted us in terms of our own internalized oppression and how that has shown up. And what are the struggles that we've had within our own families and communities in terms of not holding on to and dealing with the racist attitudes, assumptions, and behaviors that are so endemic in the dominant culture. So we've had this time to sit together and to hear from each other. And now the question for this session is, and it's for the panelists, but I'm also fully cognizant that it's true for all of you who are here as audience and witness to this, that having heard, these stories, having had these glimpses into the lives of real people, experiencing these things on a regular basis, what is it? What does that inspire you to think differently, to do differently, to act differently? And so that's the question that I will be posing, and we'll be getting, very first round, very brief, 60-second responses from our panelists. So I wanted to maybe go to Marlo, if you're here and willing to launch us on this round. I'd love to hear from you.
Edmundo, would it be fine if I could come be second? I really want to think about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a practice that we have in our classes, that we can invite people in and always have the option to pass and to name what's real with them. So absolutely, thank you for that, Marlo. So let me actually circle back around then to, what, I cannot actually not see everybody who is here from our panel. So if there's anybody from our panel who would like just to jump in, I have the little participants window open, so I could see your hand if you raised your hand and wanted to jump in. Otherwise, I will invite.
I can go first since I went first last time.
Okay.
Just break the seal. For me, what's been really powerful about hearing all the panels so far is, well, two things. One is just sharing personal stories, like hearing everyone's personal story, and how similar, yet different, but like our experiences of both microaggression, macroaggression, like full-on violence, and oppression, but then also how, like, getting into ethnic studies helped provide that analytical framework, so that it was like, as much as it's painful on a personal level, how do we move beyond it's personal, but how do we take that personal and recognize that it's institutional, that it's systemic, so that because it can be really debilitating sometimes when you are, experiencing that kind of aggression, that kind of violence, but then to recognize that it's systemic. And so my commitment is, like I said, two parts. One is I want to hear more of the personal stories. I want to connect with people on that individual level and be like, tell me about you, what do you like to eat? Like, like Derek was saying, like, let's break bread. And then together creating or developing a shared analysis, like institutionally, so as much as, we connect on the personal level, but then we build upon that to create that shared analysis. And Mylin, parties at your house. I saw you just put in the chat. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Chesa, for getting us going there.
I
Megan,
can jump in. Yeah,
please.
and Chesa and I did not talk ahead of time, but my response to that question is almost exactly the same. And so what has been so valuable for me through these past weeks is listening to everybody's social justice stories, their origin stories, and what has brought us to the place we are today. Going back and listening, Marlo talking about finding a space at De Anza, and going, that was my experience too. And so how powerful that is. I'm quite a bit older, so my experience was quite a few years ago, but how powerful that is that we're seeing those experiences again and again. And so the connectedness of all of our stories, how we have that shared connection, when we make it personal, when we're able to express it and think about how we personally fit in. And so my commitment, one of the things I was thinking about is really making sure that in all of my classes that students have that space to be able to share their personal stories, so that they're connecting to content in a different way, so that it does have that, they are making that personal connection. Then I love Chess's idea about, that kind of shared analysis, because then how can we take it from there and share it and spread it, versus just keeping it within our classroom. So that was my 60 seconds.
Right on. Beautiful, thank you. And let me go back to Amanda.
Yeah, I've had such a good time like listening to all the panelists. I think it's super important, and I just feel really like reinvigorated in some of my existing efforts to make Pacific Island Studies at De Anza like more like inclusive and intersectional, and like building more lines of solidarity. I think too, like I'm obviously like a baby teacher. Like it's only going to be like my third time teaching in the fall, like this particular class. But since my first time teaching, like I added units on like anti-Blackness, I like broadened the colorism discussion, and then I also made it like my disaggregation of API like a little bit softer and more thorough. And like by doing that, like I actually just educated myself more, like so much more, like before going to my students, and that education in myself like transferred over to like my family. It's just, we're also connected. So I want to keep on with that. And then I think another thing that this series has inspired me and like motivated me to do would be to incorporate more, because we talk about like the hierarchy of knowledge production and ways of knowing in the academy. And then when I give my students opportunities to express their knowledge in like drawing or poetry or other ways, sometimes like that's a lot more productive. But I feel very pressured to be like, oh, are they meeting these student learning outcomes and this and that? When really I think the emotional and creative learning is just as good or better. So I want to bring more personal stories back into my classroom, because I think you start from the micro and go to the macro, and then it just gets better.
Love it. I love it. This is one case where I'm not saying, damn, I wish we'd recorded this. We did record this. and Amanda, there's so many pieces to what you said that I really appreciate. Just how our own learning then reverberates outwards and affects our families, affects our relationships, our communities, and always thinking about how do we weave all these different threads together to manifest the true diversity of our world and of the human experience. There's just so many things that I just appreciate about what you were just naming there. And with that, I want to go to Marlo. How you doing now?
Doing good. Thank you for allowing me to think on my thoughts. It's been so fascinating, like the last month. There's been great reminders and stories shared that really reflect like the kind of community that we want to shape and create at De Anza. And as once upon a time being a student at De Anza and doing work where my focus at the time at the Institute of Community Civic Engagement was to build bridges between the ethnic clubs, between different clubs to create some kind of unity. I just remember that joy of feeling like I really felt like I was a part of like this village, like as a student, like my escape was going to De Anza, and whatever kind of BS racism or whatever I dealt with where I was from, or whatever kind of trauma or whatever experiences elsewhere, coming to De Anza was always just like refreshing and always showed me like what is possible, what kind of world is possible if we're able to be patient with each other, share stories with one another. And so I just remember that feeling, and coming back to De Anza now as a classified professional, like I just want to try to share that feeling more and more as possible. And this kind of experience has really reminded me of that. And you know, as a member of the communications team, we're doing these series called the Candid series, and like the purpose of it was to really like highlight and show the awesome professors, leaders, thought leaders, and scholars that we have on campus, and what we can try to do to try to highlight each other and share these ideas or stories to each other, really humanize one another. And I'm rambling, and so that's why I needed to take time to think. but one thing for sure, I remember when I was 24 years old. It was like 8 years ago. I was in the Casadero Mountains, I think, at the Tibetan temple with Edmundo. It was a nonviolent communication retreat, emphasis on decolonization. And I remember this moment, and it was like my aha moment. And it was something that continues to, you know, I continue to go back to as a storyteller, as a filmmaker. I remember it was, I forgot, it was like something that was cyclical. And he like put up like this diagram, and it just made so much freaking sense to me. And it was like we could try to address institutional change as like reactions and addressing it where it's at, or and then it showed us a different aspect of the cycle where, and when I saw the different part of the diagram, it said, or we could address directly the lens that people wear to project the world that they want to see. Because if they wear the lens of the oppressor, they're going to project an oppressed world. And so I was like, oh damn, like that's my place, like as a storyteller. And it's funny to say directly like lens, because I'm a filmmaker, so it's like I'm always thinking about kind of geeking out on like being a gearhead with different lenses and whatnot. But that for me was that moment. I was like, okay, I can play a role institutionally, interpersonally, and intrapersonally by sharing a different lens and a different way of decolonizing of what I think it was Amanda that said the undoing, right? The unteaching, the unlearning that we have to do, right? Yeah, I'm rambling. Sorry, this is why I take time to think. I communicate through film. But
no, Marlo.
Yeah.
Thank you. I remember that experience that you're talking about. It was powerful all around. So thank you for that. That's several points that I appreciate. And I want to connect now and shift to Maritza. Maritza, we haven't heard from you today, is one of our other panelists.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
Quickly, very quickly, could you just say who you are? Because again, so not everybody may
Of course, yes. Thank you for reminding me. My name is Maritza Diola, and I work with the Office of College Life as a student activities coordinator. And I've been a dancer for a year, and from the moment I came in, I've been committed to finding the spaces that do this work, because it's not explicitly in my role, but I think that was part of my intention in seeking out this position. That if the Office of Equity is the only space doing equity work, we're not serving our students. If Multicultural Center is the only safe space for students, we're not doing our work. So if I can be that little infiltrator in the student activity space, right, that was my goal. So ethnic studies, for me, I never experienced it to be just ethnic studies, right? It was so tightly woven with gender and sexuality studies, with disability studies, queer theory, all of it was just so, it was one to me. And then the way they overlap really, I think this past month really captured it, that, my own experience is bigger than me. And there's so many ways in hearing everyone's stories, like similar experiences of pain and trauma, but also the similar ways we found that reframing and community and this transformational space, like in ethnic studies, right? That similarity across identity, I found that. So just as I felt it was a privilege to be able to share my experience and feel held and seen in that moment. It was also just as moving to hear that, of others, to see the similarities and other experiences, but also just understand that there were some kinds of pain and experiences that I haven't had to experience, but just from the pain and trauma I know, right? Like, and not wishing on anyone. I just wanted to understand, like, okay, how can I show up for you? That connects back to just how I've always understood ethnic studies to be just all of these struggles, again, so interconnected. So that's, I feel like it was in action this month, being able to really see that and hold that. And my hope is that we continue to do that. And my hope is that we see our many different roles within intercultural studies and ethnic studies and office of equity and beyond, in doing that and in moving these conversations and seeing our students and colleagues in their fullness. And also, right, I think it's important if I'm going to show up for communities of color, right, that means I need to see all of who they are, right? If I see you and validate you as a person of color, but not with your queer trans identity, I'm not really seeing you. If I'm not seeing your disability, I'm not really seeing you, right? So if we're going to support communities of color, right, we need to, be mindful of all the intersections that there are, that, so many folks are in the margins of all those spaces, right? And not feeling heard in those platforms and also not in ours. So making sure that we're not, continuing that silencing, that violence in those ways, right? Again, using what we understand through ethnic studies in those other ways. But it's just been, a moving experience that, again, it's what coming into ethnic studies, it wasn't something like, this is going to connect to my career in this specific way. And, there was a point where like, okay, I'm going to eventually have to figure this out. And I did, because really, like, you can do anything with ethnic studies. You can go into any field. This is a lens that strengthens the work in education, in the sciences, in the arts, in politics, and law, all of that, right? We can do anything, but it was never that for me. It was about this unlearning, relearning, getting back our humanity and being able to see that of others that, one, I hope everyone gets a chance to have, every student, every colleague has a chance to have through class or through training. But I hope that in the culture, in everyday conversations, we can also embody that spirit as well.
Wow. Thank you, Maritza, because you're speaking directly to so many pieces, but especially that piece, I appreciate you naming that is what this project is about. I mean, and by that, I mean the project of ethnic studies as a force for reclaiming our humanity in the world, that it can speak to. It's not, again, not just speaking to our heads and informational understanding, but affirming all of who it is that we are. Because for so many of us, part of the trauma that we carry, the intergenerational trauma that we carry, is of not being enough. I mean, there's that happens for across the board for people in all families across the board. And there's a way that not being enough lands particularly harshly in very harmful ways for communities of color throughout the history of this country. And so now part of this project is, how do we reclaim that? How do we heal that? How do we truly do that work that is going to be transformational in bringing another world into being? So anyway, just all of those connections and making with what it is that you're naming. So thank you for that. And actually, I wanted to bring a student voice in here now and ask Nick if you're up for jumping in and sharing what your experiences has been, especially not only through this panel, but as a student in taking these courses in ethnic studies.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Nicholas Pope. I'm a student at De Anza, and my opinion after this, actually, just to let everybody know, I wasn't able to actually attend any of the panels. The only panel that I was able to attend was the one that I was speaking on due to my work and stuff like that. However, I believe that just being part of the ethnic studies, it's more in particular the nonviolent communication, I feel like that for me has actually kind of opened up the door to a new way of understanding how to actually fight the negative thoughts and the negative feelings and emotions that we have when it comes to interacting with people, and just being able to put them on the back burner. That means so much, just because for me personally and people that look like me, it's not, these types of tools aren't really available, and these types of spaces aren't, readily available and readily, I would say, comfortable for someone like me to actually come and be a part of and speak my piece. However, just being a part of, this whole panel and just this whole event, it's a big, it's like a kind of like a, to me, I feel like it's a welcoming party to a section of oppressed people that haven't necessarily been able to voice, their the things that they actually go through and the things that they actually experience, especially when, like the poster child for, oppression and all this stuff is, people that look like me. And it just kind of opens up the door to understanding, I believe. And, just from what I hear about the other panels that took place, I feel like, this is something that I can continue to do. And this is something that I can continue to let people in my community and let people know that look like me, help them understand that there are spaces and, there are ways that things can actually get done. And there are people that, are willing to actually help put in that work. It's not just a lost cause. So one thing that I would say that I'm committed to doing in my capacity right now, the only thing that I can do is, listen and try to learn as much as possible about other peoples and other groups, and just kind of try to work and really build and just try to understand more so, because everybody has, different motives, but the main objective is, for everybody to be, open and free to, to live without, any type of I guess, interruption, so yeah, that's what I got to say about that.
Thank you, Nick. I super appreciate you being here. Folks, you don't know how many things this man is holding and how many jobs he's doing and how much care he's giving to his family and to the community, the projects that he has and the work to give back into the community. You're going to see a lot coming. There's going to be a big impact in the world from Nick. Thank you, Nick, for taking the time to be here with us and share your thoughts and experiences. Super appreciate it, man.
Most definitely.
And I want to get a couple of more folks in here. Let's see, Derek, you didn't haven't heard you chime in on this particular piece of, like, after having been through all of this, where are you, man? Where are you in terms of, what's been sparked internally, in terms of relations with others, in terms of anything?
I have 2 points. So my first point, from all the panelists when we were doing the discussions and everything, you would hear in the chat, you would see somebody say, "Speak your truth." And I mean, that's what you got to hear over these past Fridays, was the truth, right? And with that truth, I mean, secondary was passion. You got to hear the passion of people, and it was real, right? And that realness, you had that connection, you can feel it. And every Friday, you would always say, "Hey, family, hope you're ready," right? And that family is that connection as well. And my second piece is, what am I going to be doing moving forward? It's to be an advocate, but not just an advocate for my own culture, but an advocate for everyone else. And so when one person is hurting, we're all hurting. right? So if we're really going to say we're family, then we need to look out for each other. We need to be that voice for others that can't speak up. And so that's my charge that I'm going to be doing moving forward.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate that. It resonates in so many ways, and we're gonna. I love that. I mean, just that what you named this from the beginning. Just that sense of looking out for each other, being together at the table, noticing who's missing. You know, wanting nobody forcing us to do it. It's like we're family. You show up for family. You know, that bottom line. So, thank you, brother. And I want to check now with, let's see. Kari, do you have a, I'm sorry to put this, the time check on you. I'm watching the time here, and we're about to go into a 5-minute bio break. But before we do that, I wanted Kari just to ask you, where are you in terms of how this has impacted you and what you want to, what are you drawn to do going forward?
Camera still isn't working, that's all. Yeah, I missed those panels, so I'm feeling the missing outness just a little bit, but otherwise it sounds like they were fun. It sounds like a lot of connection happened, and I hear that, and I feel glad, and I feel very hopeful. In some ways, I think the main reflection that I've actually been having to think about a lot, like in general, is like the garden path that's set out for us that we get told from various sources. I think mine was mainly, like a little bit from my parents, but a lot from like high school and teachers and everybody there, is just to kind of go about things just task to task, in a very disconnected manner. Right now, I'm thinking about how like we go from high school to college, and then like a lot of people here at De Anza are just going through college and then transferred to that other place. But if you go to that other place, sometimes really you're just there for your work and your degree and stuff like that. And it's just these very blocky steps that don't really seem to have any fluid connection. And when I think about what it really takes for us to understand how we're going to create, to build the world that we're going to participate in, right? To shape the way of life that we want to hand down to the next people, right?
Yep.
I think like it's just like it's really I need to be thinking outside of that box, to be seeing all the other paths besides the one that we get shown the most and prescribed onto us the most. And so like hearing all the various conversations that we have on De Anza, just De Anza, right? And everything that's here, like, it's just like a representation of how much really can happen just like in the space that you live. And then from there, it's just like all the communities that come to De Anza, and then the communities and the groups that, like, it's just like, it's a big web. It's a giant friggin' network. Yeah, you get it, right?
You got it.
And so like, it's just like, it's insane to me that like some people will live their entire lives and never see it, right? That's what I mean.
Super want to jump on that point, Kari, because like hopefully by now I'm hearing that resonance among the panelists, and I'm hoping that resonance is also there for our audience participants, that that we need more of this. We need more opportunities for coming together and learning about each other and making those connections that will help us figure out together what it is that we can do going forward. So when I just want to foreshadow that we're about to take a 5-minute bio break. When we come back, we're going to be asking you as participants to consider those questions that you only had a very brief opportunity to begin to address in the previous panels. But wanting you to have a little bit more time to, one, do a round of sharing your own creation stories with each other in triads, And then two, speaking to those questions of, you know, as a result of participating in these panels, what are the things that you connected with? What were the new learnings that you took away from, that you gleaned from these experiences? And then, you know, the bottom line here, what are the ways that you can imagine? What are the ways that you are drawn to take action at three levels: at your own internal reflection, you know, learning level, in your relationships, connections with others, and then at the institutional level. And especially want to think about that piece, about how it is that we, each of us here, given our respective roles, given the spheres of influence that we have, how can we come together to move forward an agenda that will create the culture for us here at De Anza and in the district that will fully serve our needs, that will be fully inclusive and bring all these dimensions of ourselves: mind, body, heart, and spirit. So with that, I'm going to ask Don to pause us for 5 minutes, give everybody a chance to drink water, release water, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself physically, and then be back in 5 minutes. So that'll be at 3:46. We'll see you back here. I'm going to do a quick screen share. Because I just working off of what Marlo was just talking about. Actually, I want to show you two documents that Marlo referenced. Since you brought it up, Marlo, I wanted to show that there was this one piece that I think is a way of understanding this analysis. I won't go into this piece here, other than to just quickly describe what this model that comes from the work of Lillian Roybal Rose, a counselor and community activist, comes from a lineage of social political activists, but developed this model in terms of describing where did these behaviors come from, and making the distinction between what is culture and what are patterns of behavior that result from conditions of oppression. Okay, very key idea. What's the distinction between what is culture and what are patterns of behavior that are the result of conditions of oppression? And I will just give you the 60-second soundbite version of this, that we start off with a human being, you know, being born into the world, that we are born with a given number of capacities. And when you think about the medicine wheel, you could basically place the medicine wheel in here, that we have intellectual capacities, you know, we have physical capacities, you know, we have emotional, relational capacities, communicative capacities, and we have spiritual capacities, ways of understanding and making connections, you know, to broader purposes and meaning and relationships in the world. So we have all of these capacities that we're born with, and we also we're born with needs, with basic human needs for very core belonging, for security, for love, you know, for connection, for safety, the whole range of human needs that each of us has in the world. But what I appreciated about her, that even though every human being born into the world may have these capacities and these needs, the question that was so powerful that Lillian Roybal Rose asked was, now, are all human beings born into the same conditions? And that was key, because that's what we've been hearing in this panel, and we've heard from our instructors about the history, the long legacy of policies, of laws, of practices, you know, of de facto social conditions that are part of different, that have impacted different communities disproportionately. So we'll have things like, you know, poverty, and within poverty we have no access to food, you know, no access to shelter. We'll have violence, where there's violence is a condition of oppression, where we have both physical violence and emotional violence. there's a whole range of outcomes that come out of these conditions of oppression that happened under enslavement, that happened under Jim Crow, that happened under the US government war on indigenous peoples across the continent. There was physical and emotional violence that happened that were created by these laws and policies and these conditions. And so what these human beings need to do, we don't just shrivel up and die. We develop ways to address, to meet our needs. We use all the capacities that we have to meet our human needs, and we will develop behaviors that will help us meet these needs. So under conditions of scarcity, we may resort to behaviors that are about, taking things that we need, even if it's not legal, even if we don't have the funds to pay for them. Under conditions of violence, we may try to become invisible and to hide ourselves, or we may need to develop strategies for becoming, violent in turn, or forceful in turn, or to at least give the impression of being violent in order to stave off, violence that's inherent around us. So there's all of these ways that human beings under any conditions, and doesn't have to be even those stark conditions, under emotional violence, there can be, these patterns of behavior that we develop that are about trying to escape, trying to be invisible, trying not to be seen. So the patterns of behavior that can develop as a result of conditions of oppression. And then what the piece that Marlo was referring to here is that then what does this look like at the systemic level? So as we've seen and we know throughout history that there has been systematic dehumanization of particular groups, throughout our history. And so those targeted groups experience structural, systematic mistreatment and dehumanization. And in an effort to survive under those conditions, will develop coping behaviors, which are responses to those conditions of oppression. We are not born into the world with certain predispositions for certain types of behavior. We develop behaviors in response to conditions. But then in the dominant culture, and with the help of the mainstream media and the prevalent voices, the voices that have power to share, this leads to negative attitudes, assumptions, and beliefs about this particular group. And it is blamed on that particular group, that it is part of their culture, it is part of their genetics, that results in these ways that are not condoned within the dominant culture. And having these attitudes and assumptions and beliefs toward this particular group then further justifies the enactment of oppressive laws, policies, and practice aimed at that particular group. And so that cycle continues in creating those systemic structures that continue to have these impacts. Now, I just want to say that negative patterns of behavior are not the only kinds of patterns of behavior that we've had. Oh, Don, I want to call forward that we still have Kari pinned.
Sorry about that.
Do I have to do something about that?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Edmundo, he's not pinned. You might just have him pinned on your monitor.
Ah, okay. It is me. It is my view. Thank you. So we're just with that framework, I want us to actually now invite our participants to move into, we'll be put into triads. And we're going to ask you to attend to those questions to the, well, 2 rounds, ideally 2 rounds for you. First round, take about 3 minutes per person, just to again, share your story of your values. What were your life experiences that contributed to how it is that you see the world and your values, particularly those values around equity and social justice. Okay, so we'll do a 1 round, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes for the people in the triads. Then we'll put in a little message in the chat and let you know that it's time to shift to the second round of questions, which is about what did you take? What was your takeaway from this time of being a part of these panels and hearing to the different stories? What resonated with you? And then finally, what is it that you're moved to do? What are you drawn to do as a result of this time that we've had together? And if you can as you have those dialogues in your small groups, if you want to use your notepad or whatever you have to write down your ideas, because we will be asking you to put them to drop your responses into the chat so we can collect those.
All right, everybody. I'm going to open the breakout rooms right now. So just note that if you missed the notice for the breakout room, it'll be found in your toolbar. You can click the 3 dots. You'll see breakout room and you can click there. If you end up in a room where you're the only person, just wait a little. Sometimes people take a little bit to get into their breakout rooms, and don't worry. I will move you into another room if there's any difficulties with people getting into your room. And just note that whatever you put in chat in your breakout room, it won't be seen in the general session, so make sure you copy it and then you can repaste it into the chat when you come back into the main session. If you need any help at all while you're in the breakout room, please just ask for help and I'll be there as soon as I can. All right, folks, rooms are open now.
And panelists, you can feel free to join if you'd like. To join a breakout group, that is.
Should we, okay, now that I'm seeing who's in the main room, I'm guessing panelists do go into a breakout room. I saw mine and then there was no one there, but I'll go back in. Okay.
I'm gonna move Chessa. She's the only one in that room. So I'm gonna put Chessa in 12. All right, we are looking good, Edmundo. All right, folks who are still in the main room, let me know if you need help getting over to your room. Saskia, if you need help.
Okay, great. All right, folks, thank you. Thank you for taking this time to speak with each other. We've got a very limited amount of time left. So again, I want to invite you to please, any of your takeaways, anything that you're able to capture in writing, if you could drop it into the chat. We'd love to have those, for our own records. And at this point is just a chance to give, very brief 30-second takeaways from our panelists. Just what it is that you gain from this experience, and again, appreciations. Always framing, starting and ending with anything that we appreciate about this time we had together. And then actually for this round of panelists, I'm going to give May a heads up that I'm going to invite you to also share out, because you are our core ethnic studies, comparative ethnic studies instructor. You have been for so long, even though you're transitioning. So anyway, there's a heads up to you there. But panelists, Cheza, do you want to stay with the tradition?
Sure, even though I was very much feeling like Friday at 4:15 right now, like very much. No, I was very fortunate to be able to touch base with Sherwin, who's like, one of my colleagues in Asian American Studies. And we, it's just been, really insightful and encouraging to hear from everybody, but then also Sherwin was mentioning, sorry, Sherwin, I'm just going to talk about you, was how he, he had his students come to all the panels and how much it has resonated with them. And I think it's just so great for us, even though like I've, appreciated, like we had conversations with colleagues and students, to know that students are witnessing it. And, I think about like Marlo's story and how, when you see it modeled, when you learn the language and you see how other folks have had their creation story coming into this work, that to know that it's still continuing through the next generations.
Right on. Thank you. Megan.
So just very thankful to have been a part of this, and mostly just that I was able to listen and hear the stories and feel connected in lots of different ways. And I'll just share a little bit about what we talked about in our little breakout session, and that is that it's been fantastic how many of us have been here, but we need more. So when we look at our college community as a whole, how do we draw in more, and so that we have that larger connection. So thankful to everyone that has been here and has participated and taken their time out on their Fridays. And then just also, I think we've heard from a lot of different groups, and recognizing also that there are others out there that need to have their voices heard as well. Or as Maritza mentioned, those on the margins, so those that maybe don't fit neatly into one group or another. And so making sure that we make space for those voices to be heard as well. And just that I walk away on Friday afternoons with my heart feeling very full, and also just needing lots of time to decompress, because there's so much. It was mentioned just in the chat earlier, like, what are we going to do on our Friday afternoons now? That this has been really special. So feeling very thankful.
Thank you, Meg. I'm going to go to Amanda.
Yeah, thank you so much once again for everybody who participated. This has been really exciting and enlightening for myself personally. And it was funny because the group I was in, it was predominantly panelists. It was Maritza and Derek, myself, and Fatima. And actually it was fortuitous, because one of the things that I have been thinking since we started the panel but wasn't sure about all of it was, where's our Arab American studies? And when are we going to be working on that? Which I think is a super important conversation. I guess I want to be brief, but I want to talk about a real instance of this solidarity, and why this is something that's really close to my heart. And it's not just because of the particular political moment. But when I was at San Francisco State and we were working on creating the Pacific Island Studies program, it was super hard for us to gain traction, because people were like, oh, who are Pacific Islanders? And also part of the Pacific Islander culture is not asking for more and not speaking up and not arguing. But as a student who was really strongly involved in the movement, I actually found a lot of solidarity in MECHA, in the Black Student Union, and probably one of the strongest supportive of us was the Palestinian Student Organization. And without those groups, straight up San Francisco State Pacific Island Studies would not exist. Straight up would not exist. But it's constant, and it still continues to this day in ethnic studies curriculum decisions, where we actually end up organizing with Arab Americans a lot, because there's a lot of discrediting of the existence of both Pacific Islanders and Arab Americans' need for representation. But every time I've worked with folks, it's been successful. We're really, really powerful together. So I guess I just wanted to flag that and bring it up, and also express my gratitude for like all the communities who have come together today and come together in the past.
Right on. Thank you for naming that, Amanda, and Chessa and Meg, all of you for having referenced that. Dawn and I are working on this. So we're anticipating that 2 Fridays from today, we will have a panel that will be focusing on the Palestinian experience in particular. We know, and I wanted to give a shout out and appreciate Sherwin for bringing this up. You know, I can't remember now, a couple of weeks ago about and really advocating for this to happen. It didn't make sense to truncate it and try to jam it here, but we really do want to give it a dedicated space. So please, you know, be on the lookout for that in a couple of weeks. And let's see, I want to actually mix it up a little bit and bring in some of our student voices here. So let's see, Nick, if you're still here, if you haven't had to run to work, you're still here. Yes. Any closing thoughts, appreciations?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I appreciate just being able to be here and find that everyone has this this hunger for making change in you know their life, whether it be their relationship, whether it be their profession, or whether it be their community. That hunger is there in all of us, and I feel like these types of events or situations kind of activate that hunger just a little bit more. And kind of, well, for me at least, I got I took from this like the activation of that hunger, and it, you know, just by being able to share with people my experience, and what brought me here was just, you know, huge. And it was just, you know, just seeing that people actually, you know, care to know, that right there, that was that hunger that was activated in me today, just a little bit more. So yeah, I just appreciate everybody for coming through and actually wanting to make a difference and make a change, and for the betterment of everybody, not just, you know, them as an individual. So yeah, thank everybody.
Right on. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you being here. And Maritza, I want to go to you. Maritza.
I don't know if I have much else to add, but I mean, I was really grateful to be in the breakout room that I was in. Just like that last, I don't know, it felt like a last note of, I don't know, call to continue this, bring this into spaces that don't get this benefit. That was always in my head in every ethnic studies class I took. Like, oh my God, if my mom could be in this room, if my tias, if my, but also the younger generations, like my little cousins, I'm going to tell them about this. I'm going to tell them that, you know, these are the kind of spaces they can seek out. So I'm always thinking about this. It's been brought up a few times. I'm thinking about who's not in the room, and just how we can expand that room. How can we expand this? And at the very least, we have an opportunity to do that at De Anza, right? I'm seeing names of people that I know are in so many different departments and parts of campus. So I'm calling on all of us to do that. To at the very least, just kind of share with your colleagues, like, hey, I was, you know, participate in this really dope panel series, and you know, and want to talk about a little bit. Even that, I think, would really inspire some really powerful conversation. But I hope it also turned into like, okay, well, how can we in this department have this lens, take these considerations to ensure we're showing up for our students and colleagues. So I feel really, pumped and galvanized in this moment. I hope, you see all the names in this space as people you can check in on and say like, I'm still
Exactly.
thinking about it, or this came up for me, this conversation kind of just, something kind of sparked the thought I want to process with you, and just, take those opportunities.
Right on.
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Manita. Derek, how about you, brother?
Am I unmute? Can you hear me?
Yes, you're
Okay.
on.
All right. Well, all right. So first of all, you always want to thank the inventor of this panel. So Mundo, shout out to you. I want to give thanks to you for setting this up for us. Man, to hear I'm gonna speak back on it. The truth, to hear people's truth was amazing to me. And one of the things that I wanted to say to those who've been rolling with us since day one, we appreciate you. And if this is your first Friday coming in, we appreciate you. But I thank you and I applaud you. But my concern is those who are not here, right? Our colleagues that we know should have attended at least one of the series. Maybe you couldn't make all of them, but at least attend one, right? And so I'm gonna go with Maritza said, where do we go from here? And I think that, if there's someone on this panel that doesn't look like you should get to know them, right? You should, hey, come rollerblading with us, come hike with us, meet me for lunch. We can go out to lunch now. Come and say, Derek, I want to hear your story. Let me hear your story, right? So don't just let this just say, wow, we did this for a month. I got this good feeling. And what do I do with this, right? So if we're going to take this bread and we're going to eat this and digest it, then let's put our walking shoes on and let's walk for justice together as a family, right? You want to stand in solidarity? Let's lock arms and let's move forward. Come rock with me. Thank
Right
you.
on. Right on. Way to rock it right there. And let's see, Demi, give us your 30-second.
30 seconds is not enough. I'm just joking. Let me wrap up my thoughts as I could listen to everyone. My thought of trend just go to everywhere. First of all, I want to chime into Professor Amanda mentioned about the solidarity, because I also remember that when the Filipino class was initially when it started, they have like an FCC Philippine class committee, and then Mitch had also joined them to have the meeting together to how to bring that to more awareness, just to let more folks know about this. So just wanted to chime into the solidarity part. And then I also want to talk about, in our breakout room, we'll talk about how immigrants feel their intersectionality about ethnic study. And then I just want to bring the awareness of the imperialism in here. Just because learned ethnic study, I know that a lot of group in their native country probably wasn't also see their government as their government. It's probably see them as a colonializer as well. And then so how do we, one thing I really hope is, because I mentioned at the very beginning, I post a lot on social media. I don't know if anyone's reading or not, but I hope they read. But I know my family around me, their dynamics are shifted, because my brother, he would just send me a lot of stuff. Like if a woman did something outstanding, he was sending to me, because he know how I was advocate about gender equality. And then my brother, the other brothers also noticed like how much I advocate for Black Lives Matters. So their attitudes shift just because they see me. They don't necessarily talk to me, but they know what am I up to. So and whatever we're doing, keep doing, because people are watching. And one quote from Oprah Winfrey say, no experience are waste. So the time we spent on here, I just really want to treasure that. I just want to share one example really quick. I remember Tom a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned about how he wasn't so tired of being viewing as a imperialism, like a Japanese American. He was she's shouting like he's American. And then because I have to do one of the homework for Professor Maylee assigned us, we have to enter different panel to go to just learning different experience. I went to one of the Japanese American panel, and then the panel speaker was telling us that how much they assimilated to, because they are putting on a pedestal. They have to choose, either they have to loyal to Japan or they have to loyal to United States. And then during the concentration camp, they were putting in there, and then when they left, some of them just like, okay, I'm not going back to California because that was a racist state. So they stay at wherever they are, their camp released them. And one of the panelists was mentioned that their camp is in the South. So when they get out of the camp, they immediately have to also do another, they have to choose again. Either they have to be similar to white, or they have to be just put in with Black groups.
Right.
And that's another so everyone has so many different stories we don't even know. And I just really appreciate that this space and that particular panel just hit me. And then I'll think back to the 3 weeks ago about what Tom says. Oh, I understand. I feel the pain now. I can connect the dot.
Yes.
So yeah, that just, I want to say, I really appreciate the past 5 weeks of what we shared today. And then even though we might not have some stuff, I don't know, luxury thought, but one day it will hit you. Just like I was hit by the thought when the Tom's like, wow. But I don't know, any of you will feel that moment. It's like a bell
Thank you,
ring.
Demi. Thank you for highlighting that dot and naming that. Appreciate it. And so let's see, Kari, you have your seriously 30-second soundbite. Okay, we've got
All right. All right.
Closing appreciation.
Yes, I wanted to appreciate everybody in my room. Somebody that I met actually from the last panel that we talked to, Lucy. And then I want to appreciate Edmundo, and then Dawn, and all the other panelists. And then I want to appreciate all the things that we talk about that we can do moving forward. Start the party, rocking with each other. I clicked the link, by the way, Dawn. I opened that link, that I'm just gonna say the same thing that Derry said. Let's get together. The pandemic is I'm looking forward to things.
Right on. Beautiful. Thank you, Kari. Appreciate that. And then May, I think we can circle back around to you, and wanted to invite you in as our core ethnic studies instructor for so long. And please, your thoughts.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm a faculty in ethnic studies here. Been at De Anza for 20 years. So first, I might as well just celebrate us, because I think there's 31 of us here on the 5th week of this 5-week panel at 4:35 on a Friday. So we might as well just celebrate us, because we are the diehards, okay? So that's, I think, the first thing. The second thing is, for all the lamentations and the worries about Zoom and the distancing that it has, I have felt a tremendous and deep sense of fellowship with this Friday group. And it's, I call it the Friday group, this Friday feeling. And part of it is because I have appreciated so immensely the heart and the intellect, the connecting of the heart, the feelings, the passion, but the deep, sophisticated analysis that everyone has brought to understanding our experiences, our respective experiences. So, to bring ethnic studies and feminist studies together, feminist studies always, feminists and feminist studies always talk about the personal is political, the political is personal. And what ethnic studies, I think, does, and despite criticisms of ethnic studies as being about, so-called identity politics and the tribalism of that, I think what's clear to me in these sessions is that our identity is nothing near something that is cultural, like an essence or something that is essentialized. We don't essentialize it. We form our sense of identity through our political analysis. And that's what ethnic studies brings to the world, a deep analysis of our lived experience in a way that makes sense of it for ourselves and shows us paths and avenues for kind of liberatory possibilities. So I love what the 5 weeks have been about. It's been all about that on the most personal level to kind of the kind of high intellectual level. And the connection is what I love so much among the people and also within ourselves. And then the last piece I would say, just to kind of work in a bit of origin story here, is, you know, my own trial by fire was 35 years ago. When I was 18 years old, I moved from New York State to California to come to college. And I discovered, unbeknownst, you know, I didn't know it was going to happen, but I came upon a college that was full of student activism. And I got involved kind of by very friendly and warm activists who welcomed me and schooled me in all things Asian American. And I became Asian American at 18 years old. And my first year at this college, just so happens, there was a lot of student activism asking and demanding things of the college. And one of the things they were demanding was Asian American studies. Also, full-time staff for the Chicano Student Center. Also, a grievance board, a discrimination grievance board at the school, because there were hate crimes and kind of incidences on campus. And what has stuck with me in the 35 years since is the late 80s, kind of at the tail end of the multicultural, you know, debates. In 1989, there was a takeover of the university, and I was a part of that. I was 18 years old. I was arrested with 54 other students. And what I learned through that experience, and part of it is because it was a multi-racial coalition of students. There were students from MECHA, from the Asian American Students Association, from the Black Student Union, from the American Indian Student Organization, and there was a group self-proclaimed the white progressive students as well. They named their politics. These are white progressive students. And as a coalition, these students all came together and demanded, you know, the full-time staff for the Chicano Student Center and also Asian American studies. I have till this day, you know, what sticks with me and what I was deeply impressed with is that students of different racial backgrounds, because they had a shared analysis of the problem, could get together and get behind each other's issues and actually speak. So you had Asian American students speaking about Chicano students' issues. You had Black students demanding Asian American studies at the university because there was Black studies, but there wasn't Asian American studies. So I want to just kind of thank the organizers, the panelists, all the participants, because I love the spirit of multiracial organizing that is happening. And the fellowship that we feel, the shared analysis, it only foretells the potential and the power of what we can do together as a multiracial coalition. So thank you for all of that. And thank you for this very heartening 5 weeks.
Thank you, May. I'm so glad you've been here and part of us this whole time, and we're able to share and wrap this up together in that way. This is so much, I think, a gift in multiple ways of people showing up and being present, you know, speaking about themselves, and showing that this is part of what decolonizing the curriculum means. It isn't just having different content in what it is that's taught. It's how we engage with each other. And I just want to name, this is part of the a little discussion that you and I had, is that this whole experience has been an organizing tool. And organizing is part of the tradition of ethnic studies, of how it is that we make social change. You know, how do we come together and to create the world that we want to live in and to bring together for everyone. So with that, I just actually want to acknowledge, you know, Lloyd, I appreciate that you're here. I know as a president type person, you're always ready on the spot. So if I call on you to say a few words, you know, how it is for you, what you appreciate about this time together.
Thank you, Edmundo. I really just want to, because I do know that we are running late on time, but I just want to once again thank each and every one of you for giving a piece of yourself to this series. And I really appreciate the fact that each of you brought all of yourselves, every piece of you to the table, and that we were each willing to be open and honest about where we are, what it is that we need, and better ways of getting to wherever we need to be. So I want to just say thank you to each and every one of you, Edmundo and your team that came together to put this series on. Kudos, kudos, kudos. I don't think that we could have asked for anything better. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the support. Wanted to say that we've been so much talking about how do we contend with structural racism. Well, this has been a structure. This has been one institutional structure that we created with the support from the senior staff, with the support from Don Litu's office, and with the participation of all of you who have come in from different department areas to make this happen. And I am excited to see how we move this forward. I'm loving all the ideas that folks are dropping into the chat. So this is not the end. So in 2 weeks, we will be here to come together to speak about the impact on our Palestinian community and the Arab community in particular. And then beyond that, we'll be looking forward to how we can create more of these institutional opportunities for us to know each other and bring the world that we want to bring into being here, now, where we can. Thanks so much, everyone. Drop your appreciation into the chat. And DJ Don, if you want to play the music for us to take us out. Panelists will have a quick check-in